Before this video starts, on Wednesday I uploaded a video on a very interesting topic, that topic being how LeBron was almost drafted by the Memphis Grizzlies. However, I accidentally uploaded it with messed up audio, which meant I had to delete it and re-upload. It was up for 10 minutes and it had 700 views in that short time, which meant the video was about to pop, but because I had to re-upload it now, it's my worst performing video of my last 10. Having to re-upload videos really hurts the performance of that video, and I was really excited to see what people thought of this one, but it tanked. So if you have not watched that video yet, please go do it. It would mean a lot to me. Also, as always, if you are new to this channel and you enjoy this video, there are many more like it to come in the future, with many more out already on the channel. So subscribe if you enjoy, and also drop a like on this video. It makes a huge difference, and I also appreciate that. Whole lot of appreciating going on here. But now let's talk about the topic of this video. Earlier this week, I did a revisiting the Kristaps Porzingis trade video, and it did well enough that I might make this a series, like looking back at old trades. So I wanted to do one on the Kawhi Leonard trade. 2 years ago, after a power struggle in San Antonio, Kawhi Leonard was traded to the Toronto Raptors for a package that could best be described as underwhelming. Kawhi then went on to help lead the Toronto Raptors to their first championship in franchise history, while the Spurs, on the other hand, stew in mediocrity. So let's look back at this trade and see how it worked out for both sides.
Absolutely incredibly with the acrobatic alley-oop.
Let's first break down the details of this trade. What did the Spurs get back? The package that the Spurs received in exchange for a top 5 player in Kawhi Leonard was DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick that the Spurs used to draft Luka Samanic, who has thus far only played 12 minutes in the NBA, and the Spurs also sent the Raptors one of the best 3-and-D players in the league, Danny Green. As I said, this trade package is incredibly underwhelming. The Spurs essentially got back a backup center, a borderline all-star, and a young player who has yet to score a basket in the NBA. If I'm being nice, Luka Samanic has looked good in the G League. He averaged 15 points and 8 rebounds, though the efficiency hasn't been amazing. There is a reason to believe that Luka can be a really solid player in the NBA, but that is about it. He is just 20 years old, and he does have some good tools with his size and shooting ability, so there's a chance that he'll be more than just a good player, but not going to happen in my opinion. Now let's talk about DeMar DeRozan. Weirdly, the last 2 years have been the best statistical seasons for DeMar in my opinion. As a Spur, he has averaged 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists on 50% shooting, which I would say is better than the 23, 4, and 4 on 45% shooting that he averaged with the Raptors since becoming an all-star. However, the perception of the value of a player like DeMar DeRozan has shifted quite substantially in the past few years. It's why he has not made the All-Star team since being traded to San Antonio despite having better statistical seasons. To put it simply, there just is not that much value in a pure scorer who is neither a good defender nor a shooter. DeMar can't space the floor, which is the single most important aspect of offense these days. He can't shoot, can't defend, and his offense is heavily reliant on mid-range jumpers. This would be okay if he had a 3-ball as well, but because he doesn't, this means that all DeMar can do is attack the basket or pull up for one of the least efficient shots in basketball. Now, I have argued in favor of the value of the mid-range shot even in today's modern game. However, my main point in my video on this topic was that forcing threes or forcing drives to the basket would make the defense be able to predict what you were going to do every time, so the mid-range game is a great way to keep the defense guessing. The mid-range is a nice third option offensively, however, if that player doesn't have the 3, that dynamic does not exist. And with Kawhi going to nearly the same team as DeMar was on the year previous, outside of Pascal Siakam being better, and then proceeding to lead them out of a a tougher East to a championship right after DeRozan had failed in the playoffs the year previous, getting swept by a horrible Cavs team outside of LeBron James while averaging 17 points on 44% shooting after averaging 23 on 46% shooting in the regular season. Leonard low-key cucked DeRozan. I don't like that term, but it kind of fits here. So the return that the Spurs got back for Kawhi essentially boils down to a guy who scores but is not actually that valuable, a backup center, and a young player who could be good but not really great. That is it. Again, for a player who went on to lead his team to a championship. Now, the reason I take issue with this is because we know there were better deals on the table, and I feel that the Spurs making the decision that they did should be held against the man who made it more than it is, and that man is Greg Popovich. Yes, Popovich is the head coach of the Spurs, but he also basically acts as the general manager. They do officially have a guy in that position that isn't Popovich, however, by all accounts, Greg pretty much decides what goes on in the front office. So at the end of the day, he was the guy who put the trade through for the Spurs. Now, before we talk about why this trade was an absolute steal for the Raptors, because that's what it was, let's actually take a look at what Kawhi's value was at the time of this trade. Because while yes, Kawhi is now known as a top 5 player, and he did eventually lead his team to a championship, that doesn't necessarily mean that was his value when this trade did happen. While yes, I thought Kawhi was a top 5 player when he was traded, as did I would say most people, that doesn't change the circumstances surrounding Kawhi at the time. Kawhi was coming off of a lingering injury that seemed to be giving him a lot more issues than it normally would have, suggesting he might end up being an injury-prone player, and even more importantly than that, there was a lot of drama coming out of San Antonio, seemingly out of nowhere, that he seemed to start. To be honest, there is a bit of cult of personality around Greg Popovich in San Antonio, so questioning him just comes off as wrong. Like if you do it, there's something fucked up about you. It made Kawhi's motivations, his behavior, his decision-making all come off as erratic, which when you add the injury factor on top of that, it puts a question mark after the name Kawhi Leonard. Also, Kawhi had yet to win a championship as a team's best player. Yes, I know the Spurs won in 2014 and he got that finals MVP. However, for some reason, people seem to believe that Kawhi was a star for that championship run when he wasn't. Kawhi was a role player during the regular season in 2014. He averaged just 13 points per game, was certainly a good player, but no one even was hyping him up to be a future star until that final series. Yes, he won finals MVP, but that award very easily could have also gone to Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, or Danny Green. That championship was a team effort, not a carry job. So Kawhi had not actually proven himself to be the player that he did prove himself to be in 2019 prior to this. And he had the combination of his injury problem as well as questioning Daddy Popovich that definitely lowered his value from what it would be now. So, is that an excuse for trading him for what they did? No, not at all. It definitely isn't. See, yes, Kawhi's value certainly was not at its peak in the 2018 offseason. However, we already know that there were other better deals on the table. The Lakers were offering Brandon Ingram and a future first, which wasn't amazing for the time, but in hindsight, holy shit would the Spurs be better off if they took this deal. Ingram now is only just 22 years old, and the case could be made that he's already a better player than DeMar DeRozan ever was. They were allegedly talking with the Celtics in a deal that could have involved Jaylen Brown, who is now a 20-point-per-game scorer. Hell, they could have taken a better deal from the Raptors themselves. I guarantee you they could have gotten a better package than they got. OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, and Pascal Siakam were all young players with upside, but the Spurs decided to trade him to Toronto for probably 2 reasons. I say probably because I am more confident in one of those reasons than the other. The first reason, the one that I'm not all too confident in, is that Popovich was just being petty. I don't deny the greatness of Pop, but I wouldn't put this past him. Kawhi asked to be traded to LA, and Greg sent him to possibly the furthest thing from LA in the NBA, cold-ass Canada. It seems petty. This whole trade seems like a massive fuck you. But 2, well, Greg proved why coaches should not be general managers under any circumstance, because it's the natural instinct of coaches to want to win. Well, unless you're this guy. And because of that, they will often make moves to win today without considering what it will mean for the franchise tomorrow. Greg Popovich made a short-sighted move in an effort to keep the Spurs afloat as a playoff team, rather than a move trading for Brandon Ingram, which would have made the team worse in the short term, but would have kept them in a positive direction for the next decade. I can't say that I blame Popovich for thinking like this, because at the end of the day, coaches are supposed to try and win, but in my opinion, he still deserves criticism for this trade. But yeah, that is the Kawhi Leonard trade revisited and why coaches should never be in charge in the front office. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.